This is Old Celtic Tales by E M Wilmot-Buxton. The Story of King Lud. King Lud was king of Britain and a very mighty warrior. He built for himself a fine castle and lived in it most part of the year. It was called Caer Lud and afterwards Caer London, but after the stranger race came to Britain, it was just called London. Lud had a brother, Leveles, whom he loved very dearly, and he married a princess of France and became king of that land and ruled it well and happily. Now, after some years, 3 dismal plagues fell upon the island of Britain, such as no other land had ever known. The first was the plague of the Coranians. These Coranians were a certain people who knew every word that was said upon the island, however low it might be spoken, if only the wind met it. And because of this, they could not be injured, for they knew all their enemies' plans beforehand. The second plague was a terrible shriek that came on every May Eve over each hearth in the island of Britain. And the shriek pierced through the hearts of all, so that men lost their valor and strength, and women and children and young men and maidens their senses, and all the animals and trees and earth and waters were left barren. The third plague was that whatever store of food and provisions might be laid up in the king's court, even if so much as a whole year's supply of meat and drink, none of it could ever be found except what was consumed in the first night. Then King Lud was very sad at heart, because he knew not how to free his land from the dismal plagues. He called together all the nobles of his kingdom and asked counsel as to what he should do in the midst of these afflictions. And they all advised him to go to France and seek the advice of Leveles, his brother, king of that land. So they made ready a fleet in secrecy and silence, lest the Coranian race should learn the cause of their journey. And Lud, with some of his chosen followers, set his face towards France. When Leveles saw his brother's ship approaching, he went out to meet him and embraced him with much joy. Then King Lud told him the purpose of his errand. And King Leveles thought a while, and, being very wise, soon discovered the cause of those dismal plagues. But they dared not talk freely about them to each other, lest the wind should catch their words, and the Coranians have knowledge of their discourse. So Leveles caused a long horn to be made of brass, and through this horn they discoursed. But whatever words they spoke into the horn one to the other, neither of them could hear anything but harsh and unfriendly words. Then Leveles saw that there was a demon in the horn thwarting all their purposes, and caused wine to be put in to wash it out, and through the virtue of the wine the demon was driven away. When this was done, Leveles told his brother through the horn that he would give him some insects, which he must take and bruise in water. And when he returned to his kingdom, he must call together all the people, both of his own race and the Coranians, as though with the idea of making peace between them. And when they were all together, he must take the charmed water made with the bruised insects, and cast it over all alike. And the water would poison the race of the Coranians, but it would not harm those of his own people. The second plague, he said, that of the weird shriek, is caused by a dragon. Another dragon of a foreign race is fighting with it and striving to overcome it, and for this reason does your dragon make a fearful outcry once every year. This must you do to rid yourself of this plague. Cause the island to be measured in its length and breadth, and in the place where you find the exact central point, cause a pit to be dug. And in the pit, you must place a cauldron full of the best mead that can be made, with a covering of satin over the face of the cauldron. Then remain there watching, and presently you will see the dragons fighting a terrific fight. Presently they will take the form of dragons of the air, and lastly, when they are worn out with the fury of their fighting, they will fall upon the covering of the cauldron in the form of 2 pigs, and they will sink in, and the covering with them, till they reach the bottom of the cauldron, and they will drink up all the mead, and after that they will go to sleep. Then you must immediately fold the covering around them, and shut them up in the strongest vessel in your dominions, and hide them deep in the earth, and so long as they shall bide in that strong vessel, no plague shall come from elsewhere upon the island of Britain. The third plague, continued Leveles, is caused by a mighty magician who takes your meat and drink and stores of provisions. Through his illusions and charms he causes everyone to sleep. Therefore must you watch your food yourself, and, lest he should overcome you with sleep, have a cauldron of ice-cold water by your side, and if you begin to get drowsy, plunge into the cauldron." Then Lud thanked his brother for his good counsel, and returned to his own land. And first he summoned a meeting of all the people, both of his own race and that of the Coranians, and he bruised the insects in water and cast it over the heads of all of them. Immediately it destroyed all the race of the Coranians, but his own people were hurt not at all. And this was the end of the first dismal plague. Then he caused the land to be measured in its length and its breadth, and he found the central point in Oxford, and in that place he caused the pit to be dug and the cauldron of mead to be placed, with a covering of satin over the face of it. There he presently beheld the dragons fighting, and when they were weary they fell into the mead under the shape of pigs, and when they had drunk up all the mead, they slept. And Lud folded the covering round them and hid them in the strongest place he had on Snowdon, and so the fierce shriek ceased to be heard in his dominions. And this was the end of the second dismal plague. When this was all ended, King Lud caused a very great banquet to be prepared in the court, and when it was ready, he placed a cauldron of ice-cold water by his side, and sat down to watch over the banquet. And about the third watch of the night he heard sweet music and gentle songs, which lulled him to sleep. But when he found himself getting very drowsy, he went often into the ice-cold water. At length a man of great size, clad in strong, heavy armor, came in, bearing a hamper, and into this hamper he began to put all the food and provisions of meat and drink, and proceeded to go forth with it. And King Lud was so stupefied with astonishment that one hamper could possibly hold so much that he had almost let him go. At last, however, he recovered his senses and rushed after him and cried, "Stay, stay! Though thou hast done me many insults and stolen much spoil ere now, yet shalt thou do so no more, unless thy skill in arms be better than mine." The magician instantly put down the hamper and rushed upon him, and they fought so desperately that fire flew from their arms. At length the victory was to Lud, and he threw the plague to the earth. Then the magician besought him for his life, and promised to serve him as his vassal, and put all his power in the hands of the king if he would release him, and to this king Lud agreed. And this was the end of the third dismal plague. From that time forth King Lud reigned in peace and happiness in the island of Britain.
The Ultimate Question is a fully dramatized, award-winning fantasy story, available free for a limited time wherever you listen to audiobooks or podcasts. Please find all the links by visiting uqstory.com.
That's the end of the story for now. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe to be sure not to miss future stories. Please also consider visiting SchaeferMediaEnterprises.com to support this free service. Thanks.